You should appoint judges and officers in all of your cities that Hashem is going to give you to inherit them. All your tribes, every Jewish tribe, every Jewish city, every Jewish community should have judges, should have officers who are tasked with ensuring that a person is going to follow the Torah, 1024, follow the Torah, follow the instructions that Hashem has given to the Jewish people. And the Kabbalists write, there's also a hint to this. The Shachal HaTorah tells us that the B'chol Sha'arecha, all of your gates, could be understood to refer to the openings of the body. That a person in his own body, in his own, the human body is compared in the book of Koheles, is compared to a small city. And the entrances to the body, the limbs of the body, are compared to the gates of that city. And a person should have in his mind and in his heart, he should have officers and judges and officers to think about whether or not the particular action that he's doing is correct, whether or not, should he be looking at this thing, should he be listening to this thing, should he be saying this thing, all the different senses that a person has. He should control himself and guide himself to act according to what the Torah requires of us. And it's very important, the enforcement of the Torah's laws should be done honestly. You shall not pervert judgment. You shall not respect someone's presence. You shouldn't say, this guy's a great guy. We'll let him win the case even though he doesn't deserve it. Or even to say, this is a poor person and, he really owes the money, but I want to be nice to him and I'll let him go without paying money that he really owes to someone else. And we can't do that. We have to judge honestly and judge righteously. And in fact, the Talmud records an opinion that says that when King David would judge people and there would be a poor person we found guilty, that he would tell him, you're guilty, and I'm going to pay the fine for you. You don't have to pay. I'll pay it for you. But still, the judgment has to be done correctly and has to be done fairly. And righteousness shall you pursue, so that you will live and possess the land that Hashem will give us. And Rashi comments on that in the merit of having an honest court system and having righteous judges, that will be a merit to allow the Jewish people to inherit the land of Israel and to dwell there securely. It tells us furthermore, you shall not plant for yourself an idolatrous tree, any tree near the altar of Hashem. And the Talmud says that these two verses are connected to teach us that someone who is appointing a dishonest judge is similar to someone who's bringing idolatrous worship into the temple. The court is a place where Hashem's presence rests, Jewish court, and that is something that should be done with honest judges, with upright and upstanding judges. And to do the opposite of that is tantamount to idolatry. And this is brought down in the Shulchan Aruch. It says that a person, litigant, also has, when a person has a type of claim against another Jewish person, that case should be adjudicated in a Beis Din, in a Jewish court, and not, heaven forbid, to go to a secular court for a case between two Jewish people. And the Shulchan Aruch says that someone who would go away from a Jewish court and instead choose to litigate a case in a civil court without having the proper permission from the proper procedures to go to a rabbi, go to a Beis Din, and if the case needs to be adjudicated in civil court, to get permission from the court to go ahead and do that. But just going ahead and going to a civil court without first trying to deal with this through a Beis Din, the Shulchan Aruch tells us this is if someone raised his hand against the Torah of Moshe. It's a strong language. It's if to say the Torah, is nice on a theoretical basis, but practically I'm going to civil court. But there are times that a person has to, but that should be done in consultation with a rabbi, in consultation with a Beis Din. And in fact, the Chassam Sofer tells us is that when a person goes through the proper procedure and goes to a Beis Din and they tell him that whatever reason it would be that he has the right to seek a judgment in a civil court, that changes the whole procedure. That makes the psak, the ruling of the Beis Din, the Jewish court, is go ahead and seek a verdict from a civil court, and that gives permission to engage in this procedure. But otherwise, just going to the civil court without first having that ruling from the Beis Din would not be the proper way to go. It tells us again more laws about idolatry, which is certainly a practice that Hashem does not approve of, and tells other various laws about the court procedures. To go quickly, a few highlights is there's a law of the Zaken Mamre, the rebellious elder. If there would be a question of Jewish law, it would need to be adjudicated in the Sanhedrin, in the highest Jewish court. And once the Sanhedrin has issued a ruling, that's it. That's the law. And someone who would willingly rule against the final decision of the Sanhedrin is considered a rebellious elder, and that actually carries the death penalty for someone who would pervert the law of the Torah that way. It tells us furthermore the law of appointing a king. And Jews are instructed to appoint a king, but to know that king who rules over us is also to be guided by the Torah. The king, in addition to the copy of the Torah that every Jewish person is supposed to have written for himself, the king is supposed to have a second copy of the Torah written, which he will carry with him always, to remember that he rules not because he's an absolute monarch, but he rules according to the laws of the Torah and according to the instructions that Hashem sends him through the Torah and through the prophets, and that is what gives success to the Jewish king, to the Jewish government. It continues to tell us the laws of the priests and the Levites and their portions in the temple sacrifices. It tells us the laws of the prophets, beginning, this is chapter 18, verse 9, on top of page 1032. It tells us when you will come to the land, you'll notice that the Gentiles have all sorts of means of divination that they employ in sorcery and idolatrous practices which they use to try and divine the future. And you should not do so. You should be wholehearted with Hashem, and you should know that any instruction that Hashem has for the Jewish people, He will send us through His prophets, and to heed the instructions of a true prophet, and certainly the prohibition against a false prophet, or a prophet who does not carry out the mission which Hashem sends him to do. We then begin chapter 19 as the laws of the city of refuge, which we talked about before, about the month of Elul. Is of course one of the hints to the month of Elul. Is in a verse not in this week's parsha, but in a different discussion of the cities of refuge. Is the verse that Hashem prepared a place for people to run away to, an inadvertent murderer to run away to not be in danger of his life being taken away from him by a avenger, member of the family of his victim who wants to take vengeance. That will not call him the redeemer of the blood, the Goel Hadam, but he will not be able to get this person. He'll be in a city of refuge, and that the month of Elul, in some way, and it's highlighted from reading this portion at the beginning of the month of Elul, so the month of Elul in some ways functions as a city of refuge for the Jewish people, as a time of introspection, a time of tshuva, a time of devotion to Torah study. Like the Gemara tells us, the Divrei Torah Kontan, the words of Torah themselves act as a refuge and enables a person to escape from any type of vengeance that's sought after him. We're told the person has to keep the proper boundaries of the land. The boundaries should not be moved improperly. It tells us the laws of the Eid Zomem, the witness who gives false testimony. The witness who gives false testimony is given the punishment that he tried to impose on the person against whom he testified falsely. And we get to chapter 20, which gives us the first set of the laws of war that the Jews are instructed to observe when they come into battle. We're told that the Jews should not be afraid. You shall say to them, in chapter 20, verse 3, it says that a Kohen is appointed to read to the Jewish people this passage. It begins, Hear, O Israel, with the famous phrase, Shema Yisrael. And Rashi comments, quoting from the Talmud, that even if the only merit the Jewish people have is the recital of Shema, daily and nightly, the saying Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, that Hashem is one, that merit will stand on our behalf during the time of war. And there's a commandment which many commentators actually count as one of the 613 commandments, not to be afraid of the enemy in war, to know Hashem is with us. And the Jews are sent back. There are people who have built a new house, people have planted a new vineyard, people have married a new wife, and have not yet begun to live in their house or plant their eat from their vineyard or marry their wife. They just have been betrothed, they haven't been married yet. They can go home, and certainly someone who has just gotten married, just moved into the new house, just planted the vineyard, would not have to go out to war. And also someone who's afraid, and the Talmud says it's not only someone who's afraid, physically afraid of battle, but someone who is not up to the standard of righteousness that's demanded of the Jewish army. The Jewish army should be manned by people who are righteous people who are not, it is not even the somewhat minor sin of when putting on the tefillin, of talking between putting on the hand tefillin, putting on the head tefillin. It says that we want an army that has no sins whatsoever, and not even people who are talking at parts of davening they shouldn't be talking at. The really righteous people should be going out to war, and that will be the vehicle through whom Hashem will give victory to the Jewish people. We're told to fight. We're told before fighting a war against the enemy to offer them a chance for peace, and if the enemy refuses to accept peaceful terms, we'd have to wage war against them, and this applies only to future wars. The Jews would fight the war against the 7 nations who lived in the land of Israel before the Jews came in. Though they were offered a general opportunity to have peace before the Jews crossed into the land, which they refused, and at that point, before an individual battle, the Jews were not supposed to offer them peace terms, but to fight until the enemy was wiped out. And we're also told here the mitzvah of bal tashchis, of not wasting something. There might be fruit trees that are located near a city that's being besieged. Don't cut down the fruit tree, because it shouldn't be wasteful. We shouldn't destroy a fruit tree that's no reason to destroy it, to deprive it of its production of fruit, and generally not to waste something that a usable item. The passage concludes with chapter 21, the beginning of chapter 21, which is the law of the egla arufa, the calf whose neck is broken, and this is done when there is an unsolved murder in the Jewish community. That a calf would be brought by the elders of the city who lives near where the corpse is found. They break the neck of the calf in a valley, and they ask Hashem to have mercy on the people of the town, and say that they should be absolved from any guilt that might have incurred, that they didn't provide or protect this person who's traveling through the land of Israel. It's actually a story to conclude. It was during one of the many wars that plagued Europe, the Jewish communities in Europe. There was once an occasion, a number of local Jewish people, Jewish soldiers, I'm not sure who they were, but they were arrested by the army that was moving through the town, and they were held as hostages, and they were going to be executed. And the rabbi came to talk to the general to see if he could get these people out, free the people. And the general says, "Look, Rabbi, this is wartime. We have to make an example. We can't be lenient in wartime. A lot of people are getting killed in the war, and we got to do what we got to do." And the rabbi told him, "You see, if you look in the Torah, telling us here the laws of war, then it tells us this law about the egla arufa, this unsolved murder. The next parsha, it goes back to the laws of war. So why do you have that like that? Why is this portion over here? It's telling you that even when you're fighting a war, you have to be respectful of human life. You have to be as much as possible. Obviously, a war is not a very peaceful activity, but to the extent possible, to be respectful of human life, and to be to be conscious of that." And the general released the prisoners. Just the Haftarah again. We're continuing these 7 Haftarahs of comfort. This Haftarah begins with the phrase, "It is I am He who comforts you." Page 1199. That the Midrash tells us this is a response the 7 haftarahs of comfort begin with the statement which Hashem sends through the prophet, "Be comforted, my people. Be comforted, my people. Nachamu, nachamu ami." And the response of the Jewish people is, we don't want comfort through a prophet. We want comfort from you, Hashem, from Hashem Himself. And Hashem tells us that this haftarah responds to this request. It is I who comforts you, and therefore, who are you that you should be afraid of a man who shall die and of the son of man who shall be set as grass? There's no need to fear the human enemies. Hashem is looking out for us. Hashem is the one who's been guiding us throughout the time of exile, and Hashem is the one who's going to lead us out. The final verse of the Haftarah tells us, "For it is not in haste that you shall go forth, nor shall you go up in flight." When Jews left Egypt, they left in some way, in b'chipazon, in quickness, in haste. We eat the matzah to remind us we had to run out of Egypt in less than 18 minutes. We were out of Egypt. The bread didn't leaven. But the time of exile, throughout this time of exile, Hashem is with us, and Hashem is the one who's going to bring us out. We're not going to be in haste. We're not going to be running, nor should we go and fight. For Hashem shall go before you, and it is Hashem who is Masivchem and Lokei Yisrael. That Hashem is the one who will gather in all of the Jewish people to make sure that every Jewish person is present and accounted for at the coming of Mashiach.
Amen.